Hello, everyone. Yair Spitz here from the field with an update. Today was a very emotional day for me. I had the chance to shadow for the whole day, most of the day, to shadow an officer who serves the role of Kaban. In Hebrew, Kaban stands for K'tzin B'riut HaNefesh, and this is an officer who, basically, mental health officer, I guess would be the literal translation. And usually these are people who are in their civilian life are either therapists or psychiatrists or psychologists, and their job is exactly what you would expect, is to go and meet either individual soldiers one-on-one to offer emotional, psychological support and assistance, and also to meet with groups of soldiers and then to do what he can, considering a lot of the challenges that people are going through. And I had a chance to shadow. There's a very slight overlap with my role as the rabbi, even though I don't have any professional, official background. In a very small level, that's one of the things that I try to do. So I had a chance to shadow him today, take him from between the different units in the area, and to sit in on the sessions, the group sessions that he did. It was an extremely moving experience, and I'll share just a couple of the stories with you. So there were 3 different units that we went to, all of them part of my battalion. And he sat with groups of 20 soldiers here, 30 soldiers here, 10 soldiers here, and basically he's, he would introduce himself, say a little bit about himself, share a little bit about him, which I'll tell you a little bit at the end. And then he kind of invited the soldiers sitting there to anyone who feels comfortable with it to just introduce themselves, their name, a little bit about themselves as far as in life, married, children, any detail like that they feel it's important, and then to share with him, with everyone, what challenges they might be facing, and what mechanism or what methods have they found in order to try to deal with that challenge. And basically what happened with all the groups that he met with, as time went by, so soldiers started opening up and started sharing, and a lot of these soldiers are soldiers that I know. And some of the stories that they shared were absolutely heart-wrenching, the challenges that some of the people are dealing with. And basically what happened was he basically did, did group therapy for everyone based on the individual stories that was shared with him. So I'll just share a couple. In one of the higher ranking officers, shared that he has 3 kids at home. Says, but since the very beginning of the war, both he and his wife, who are both pretty high ranking officers, have both been called up, and each one of them goes out for a day here, a day there. And he said he feels like at the beginning of the war, everyone's focus was on here and the war. It was clear that the military effort is where the majority of the emphasis, needs to be. Both the soldiers that are in the army felt that way, and also the Oref, also the civilians. It was clear that all efforts of the whole country are towards the war. He says he feels that as the weeks have gone by, that the challenge and has become lesser in the army, and the challenge has slowly shifted towards the civilian front. And he shared that this past week was the first time that he went home, and then he felt that he can't come back to the army. That for the first time, he asked the soldiers underneath him, the officers below him, said, try to see if he can stay one more night. And he said what made him feel he needs to stay home just one more night. He said he was sitting with his oldest child, who was 4.5 years old. And he said that his 4.5-year-old boy, 4.5 years old, said to him, he said, Abba, He said, I don't want you to go back, because if you go back, I'm afraid you'll never come back again. And then he said he was talking to his son about this, and then his son said that he says, Abba, don't go. I don't want them to steal me. And he said that he felt he can't just put his son to sleep and 8 hours later leave. He said that his children for the last 6 weeks have basically seen both their father and their mother just a day a week, and they've been either at friends' houses sleeping or at their grandparents for a few days. And he shared this with the Kabban and with the group, and then the Kabban went on to discuss with him and tried to process it. He said, "How did you feel about not coming back the next day?" And he said he felt guilty. He felt he needed to be said, and he processed it with him. He says, "Do you really feel that that's something you need to be guilty about?" And he talked it over with him, and then he went on to say, what are the support systems that you have for your family? Do you have support systems that you can put in place? I won't share the whole thing, but it was amazing to see both the fact, the openness of this officer in front of all the soldiers, and also the therapeutic process, and it was clear that other people are experiencing similar things. You can see in people's eyes, and you can see that this person is standing before 30 soldiers and basically doing group therapy through this individual. Then another soldier asked to speak, and he said that he introduced himself. He said that he has a cousin of his that's was taken captive in Gaza, and he's been very worried, and he has 4 little kids at home, and his wife has tremendous difficulty dealing with it. She supports him being here, but even so. And then he shared a little bit more, and then the psychologist, he said to him, he said, well, and what mechanism are you using to try to deal with this? So he answered. He said, well, my way to deal with it is repression. That's I've become a big jokester. I play jokes on the guys. I laugh a lot. I tell a lot of jokes. I says, and basically that's basically repressing. That's my way to deal with it. And over here, the therapist, psychologist, officer, he said, repression is one of the tools that our nefesh, that our psyche has, in order to allow us to continue functioning. And sometimes it's necessary and healthy. And he said he said the best way to understand how repression works, he said it's like a tourniquet. He says when someone is experiencing a severe injury, so sometimes the only way to be able to continue living and continue functioning is to put on a tourniquet, and that initially could be a good and healthy response. He says, but the danger with the tourniquet is that if you leave it on for too long, eventually it can cause it can poison the blood, and that could eventually reach the rest of the body. That can cause a much more serious situation. So it says to the same degree, repression also is a immediate crucial response for a person in an extreme situation to be able to continue functioning. But the ability to recognize that it's repression could and should allow you, this is what he told him, he was speaking to him in the first person, should allow you to slowly find the mechanisms and the people in order to slowly open that tourniquet in a safe way, and to open that repression, and to be able to deal with those difficulties in a longer term way, in a healthy way. Another soldier shared with him that he's having difficulty dealing with the uncertainty. And this is something that a lot of the soldiers spoke about, the uncertainty. They don't know how long they're going to be here. They don't know how long their family life is going to be, with ups and downs, and they don't know how long their job, But this specific soldier really crystallized it. He said that he's pretty certain that he's going to lose his job. He said he works in high tech, so they can't officially fire him. He says, but he worked extremely hard at this company for the last 7 years. And he says he built up a certain status for himself in the company. He says, but he knows that the projects that he's been working on and he's been spearheading, he says other people are working on them and they're moving forward. And he knows that when he comes back, he doesn't know when he's going to come back, but he knows that by the time he comes back, his role in the project won't exist anymore because the company continued and the project continued. And he said, and he's basically going to be demoted, and eventually he's going to find himself without a job. He says everything that I worked for is going to be will have been for nothing. He says, and also I have a fiance. We've been dating for a few years. I have a fiance, but we haven't been together for the last couple months. We've barely seen each other. He says, and I feel that she's drifting away also. And the longer I'm going to be here, and with uncertainty, I'm going to lose everything. Lose my job, lose my fiance. And he actually he broke down, started crying. People next to him, put their hand on him. He leaned on them. So the psychologist, he said to him, first of all, he said, like, just like he says to everyone, he said, thank you for sharing. And then he said, you talked about the status that you've achieved at work and in life. He says, what was it that allowed you? How did you achieve the status that you in the position you were in life? Up to the war. So he answered. He said, he says I was very decisive. I was very hungry for it. I was very motivated. He said I have a very very strong work ethic. So he said, those same things those same qualities and those same positive qualities that you have that allowed you to achieve that status and that position that you achieved in life, says they're still there. Those things you're not going to lose. It says, and even if you do end up losing those things that you cherish and that you've built, those qualities, not only do you still have them, but chances are that you'll come out of this war and these challenges with those same qualities enhanced, and you'll start again, and you'll start from the beginning if you have to, but you'll be able to achieve the same things and quite likely even better, even stronger. It says, and it's not easy. It says, but those things you said you feel you're losing everything. It says you're not losing who you are, and you're not going to lose those things that brought you to where you are, and that's something to hold on to and to look forward to. Just like those three, there's probably 20, 25 others. Each soldier sharing different aspects of the challenges that have to do with every aspect of life. People who have family and friends who are in who are in Gaza and they haven't heard for them. People whose families are not supportive, might not be so supportive or were supportive at the beginning, but are making them feel guilty that they are leaving them alone and leaving. Just the amount of stories was amazing for me to see, and shocking for me to see that so many of the soldiers that I'm familiar with are dealing with so many difficulties that I and the people around them weren't aware of. And then he went on to talk about what we as a unit, we as a platoon, as platoons, we as a battalion can and should be doing in order to help the people, to help everyone. Talked about very practical advice as far as strengthening the cohesiveness of the units, bringing in fun events also, as far as making sure that there are individuals who are checking up on people and giving them time and space to have these types of conversations to share. Talking about even things like daily physical activity in order to raise the dopamine levels in our body, in order to improve the mood. Competitive sports when it's possible, to play soccer or things of that sort. It was really mind blowing to see someone come in and speak to such large groups and actually take dozens of soldiers together through these therapy sessions. But beyond these individual stories that make it amazing to see, people who are on the one hand uh, dealing with such complicated situations and difficulties, but they're still here. They still want to be here. They're still motivated. They still understand the importance. But how much people are sacrificing, like actually sacrificing from their family life, from the personal life, and the difficulties. Some people are talking about the fact that their families don't necessarily support them, make them feel guilty about the fact that they're deserting them. Not everyone is necessarily on the same level of motivation. Not everyone is. It's not as easy for everyone. But beyond all this, the most amazing thing was the Kaban himself, this officer psychologist himself. So I mentioned that at the beginning of each one of the sessions with each one of the groups, he shared a little bit about himself, and he said in order to break the ice, in order to get an atmosphere of sharing and people allowing themselves to be vulnerable and expose and share, he shared his own personal story. And that is that he's been volunteering as a reservist for almost 20 years as a psychologist. And he said, but this war, not just in the professional perspective. He says he's from Kfar Maimon, which is about 5 or 6 kilometers away from the border with Gaza. He says, as he said, on the Shabbat of Simchat Torah itself, Kfar Maimon itself wasn't really hit that bad. There were some small attempts to infiltrate, but they were able to hold them off. He says, but later that day, he found out that his oldest son, who was a lieutenant colonel, he was the commanding officer of the Nachal infantry brigade's commando unit, was killed. Was killed on that very first day during a battle against in one of the areas where the Hamas infiltrated. So he said, so the next day, his son was married, 3 little kids. He says the next day they started sitting shiva. So he said, the first week of the war we were sitting shiva, and then he said his second son was engaged to be married, and the original date was they decided not to push off the date of the wedding. That's what his son decided. So he said day after the war started, they started sitting shiva, and then the day they got up from the shiva, in the morning they got up from the shiva, and that same night was the wedding of his other son. He says the following day, the day after he got up from shiva, in the morning after he married off his son, he showed up in his unit, in his reserve unit, to start going from base to base, from unit to unit, mostly across the north. He actually said at the beginning, the first 2 weeks, he was together with the units that were going into the areas that had, the Zaka units and the army rabbinate units that were going in and collecting the bodies where all the atrocities happened. And he says, and he was their psychological and emotional support, which obviously was extremely challenging. And he says once that was mostly done, he came up north, and this is what he does. He spends his days going from unit to unit to unit all across the north, meeting, just like he did by us today, met 3 different groups, and basically listening to people's difficulties and challenges and fears and traumas, and basically running group therapy for hundreds of soldiers a day. And the person just sitting there tranquil, listening, processing with people, taking them through a therapeutic process as individuals, as a group. And it's just unbelievable to see. And I don't have enough words to express how noble this person is, especially considering his own personal tragedy. And he spoke, he expressed his own tragedy, and he used his own challenges and his own the way he's been dealing with it as part of his discussion with the soldiers, and stories about his son, and just unbelievable to see the type of people who are here, and And to me, it was an eye-opening experience to understand that people are dealing with the difficulties, and that some of the challenges back at home at the moment or in the civilian arena are just as big and maybe even bigger than being here, where it's easier for us to feel like we're doing something. And there was a lot of talk about how we strengthen the civilians, how we can take back what we're feeling, and how we can, and the fact that we're in this for the long run. And then we need to find the mechanisms and the people and the dynamics that will help us, and what to stay away from, like the news cycles, and connect ourselves to positive things and positive people, and to know how to ask for help from the right people, and to create systems in our lives in order to stay connected to positive things and to be able to express ourselves. And again, amazing to see these beautiful, beautiful, inspiring souls of Am Yisrael helping each other, supporting each other, so that was my experience today, and I'm very, very much still processing it myself and trying to understand what it means for me, what it means for me moving forward with my own unit. So I thought that was meaningful, would be meaningful to share.